Hello, everyone. My name is Denim, and welcome to the second episode of the Whole Without podcast. In a world where we're constantly being told to be more, Whole Without encourages us to have real open conversations. So grab a coffee, take a seat, and let's dive into what it means to be whole without. I'm excited to announce that today's special guest is Jamie Hayes. With over 15 years of experience in mental health, she's definitely an expert. She pushes individuals to be their authentic selves and find strength in their story. So let's welcome Jamie Hayes. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. I'm so excited. I feel like this has kind of been in the works between the two of us for a while. So being
Yeah.
able to finally sit down and have this conversation is super exciting. And so we're just going to kind of go and dive right in deep. So our first question, the first question that I have for you, what are some emotional challenges that you see from kids and teens who have faced parental absence?
Definitely a lot of internalized blame. So
Mm,
you'll see that the kid feels like, it's my fault that the parent left, or they're not here, or that they may have made a choice over me. You'll see a lot of internalized blame, anger, resentment. I could think a few years ago I saw a clip of a little boy outside, looked like they were outside on a sidewalk or a basketball court. His mom is like high, she's kind of leaned over and he's yelling at her, wake up. And he like slaps her. And it's just so much like hurt in little boy's voice. So I
mm,
think that there's anger there, there's resentment. You'll see that kids will struggle to identify who they are. Because if you think about it, a lot of our identity is formed in our formative years by how our parents interact with us. So if you
absolutely.
don't have that parent there to interact, it kind of leaves you feeling like, who am I? This part of me never really formed, or, if I don't have a relationship with my mom or I don't have a relationship with my dad, I'm missing a part of me. And then most often, no closure, you
Right.
know, you didn't get to say goodbye or you didn't get to have that final whatever, or they just up and left one day. You hear a parent say they were going to go to the store or they say,
Mhm.
they're going to go to work and they never come home or an accident or anything. So kind of like not having that closure sometimes. You'll see kids struggle with that emotionally.
I mean, for me, going through that same struggle with my father, being that person, and then luckily it's never led to there being a loss in his life. But I can see exactly what you're talking about for so long as a child, and even I think for me it affected me more and as I was younger, seeing these children that I see their relationship with their father, and I don't have that same relationship. I just have my mom. I can't even go to father-daughter dances because my dad's not going to show up. And for so long, like you said, I struggle with my identity. And even in group settings, I found that whatever group I was, I kind of just molded myself to fit in that group because I didn't know who I was.
Right.
And I do believe that, not to put all of the blame on my father, but I do believe that a lot of that struggle with my identity and who I was. And for so long, even sometimes making decisions I shouldn't have was because of his absence. Getting to the next question on a more positive note, what are some things that children, teens, and even adults can do to properly cope with that?
Well, definitely having tools and resources in play, right? So whether that's group support or that's a strong friendship, starting therapy, or even self-work like journaling, maybe even reading or a podcast that
Yeah.
kind of helps you be able to see yourself in another space, like not feeling like you're so alone or you're the only one that's going through it. That definitely helps us be able to navigate because where you felt the absence of connection, building connections really helps us be able to move forward with that. Not dismissing or minimizing how you feel is important as well. So, you might house that anger or resentment towards that parent and not being like, well, I didn't need my dad in my life anyway, or he was no good at this, that, and the other, and not addressing the impact that it truly had. Because once you're able to lay it out and see it for what it is, you're able to get those tools and resources in place to help you process forward from it, right? Um, just rewriting your narrative about it too. Like I said, when we're younger, we house a lot of the feeling that I may have did something or I wasn't enough of something, that my parent made a different choice, but knowing that they are adults, humans with their own deficits, and there may be reasons why they didn't have something or they didn't know something or they didn't do something, and that's independent of you. So
Right.
like, my parent not being in my life is not a fault of mine. It is something that they had going on. And
Mm.
for any reason, right? Infidelity, left the family, addiction, whatever. People go through their own battles, and all the time they don't consider, what the collateral damage of going through those battles will do.
Yeah, I think literally everything you said is so powerful because I'm running back through my mind and what I struggle with. And I think for so long, I did blame myself for my father's struggle with addiction.
Mhm.
And I thought, what makes me not good enough for him to, want to be a father, for him to want to grow up? What makes me good enough only for short periods of time for him to get it together and then he kind of just falls off? And I think a lot of the reason why I didn't heal was because, like you said, I invalidated my feelings. I made it seem as if, okay, this isn't a big deal. I don't need my dad. I don't need him in my life. I would tell my mom I was okay. In reality, I really wasn't.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to uncover those feelings, talk about those things. And I feel like I discovered so much about myself when I was able to be open and communicate and say, this is something that has been hurting me. It's hurt me for a very long time. But I think another big thing that I was able to do and advice that I give to anyone is forgiving them. It's like it's something that like I think a lot of times we forget that it's not just for them, it's also for you. And I
Yeah.
had so much healing from finally forgiving my father and actually forgiving him, not just saying, but it's
That
it's a heart change. Yeah.
That part, that part right there. I want to caveat on that and also say that, you know, get there in your time as well. You're very right. Forgiveness is for ourselves, not necessarily to let the person off the hook or forget what they did. It's about wanting to put down some of that anger, that burden that we've held on to for so long for what the actions that these people did, but not to feel like you have to rush to do it just because someone tells you you have to do it.
Mhm.
You're right. Forgiving and speaking the words and forgiving, changing your stance, your heart posture, how you actually feel are two different things.
Right.
You want to actually navigate towards all the parts of forgiving that
Mm.
come along with that and not just feeling like someone's, well, that's your dad. You should forgive him. That's your dad. No, I need to be able to position my heart where I've truly been able to say, you know what you did was you, and I forgive you for that. And how do we navigate forward, or how do I get myself forward from this part?
For the people like me that struggled with self-worth because of a parent being gone, what advice would you give to them?
Well, definitely work is not given to you by somebody else. Work
Period.
is something that you
Love
have
that. All of a sudden.
discover on your own. Yes. So I
Mhm.
think that, when we look for that sort of like validation or to feel important by that person who has played such a pivotal role in our life or didn't play, like if you had a parent that was not there, alive, but not there in your life, you still are like looking for that value. Why didn't you value me? Well, that's not given to us by anybody else. That is something that we have to work to discover and find on our own. And all that comes from what we're just talking about, the work that you do, engaging in groups, talking to someone, knowing that you're not alone, therapy, all of it. It gives you the ability to discover your value and your worth for yourself and not look for someone else to, deem that for you, right? That goes hand in hand with building your own identity, right? Getting out of the shadow of what this person's absence has done for you. I don't want that to be my identity. I don't want to just be known as the child who was in a single parent household or the child who dad was strung out on drugs. That's not my identity. I'm working to define who I am for myself. And that's what I need to know and learn to discover as I continue to grow up, right? Start small. Make sure that you anchor yourself in somewhere where you're going to have camaraderie. So for a child, that might be a group support, right? That could be family therapy when you're younger. When you're older, it is the intentional seeking out of someone that can help you navigate these feelings. Someone who can give you, whether it's exercises or direct you in a way. So being intentional about building up that self-worth and not just attaching it to, what has happened in your life.
And that's really the whole point of this podcast and really my initiative is to allow people to realize that you're whole no matter who shows up. It doesn't matter. And isn't that like a beautiful thing and a beautiful realization to realize that your worth isn't built upon what other people have to think about you or the image that other people have of you, but it's built off of what you want yourself to be.
Yep.
And I think that, like you said, it's important in times like this to remember who you are. Who are you? And really just diving deep into that. And even for me, it took a lot of soul searching to realize who am I outside
Right.
of my parents, outside of pageants, even outside of school. Who is Denim? And I think that when I came to that realization, everything clicked for me. And so I think that it is important to realize that your identity is built off of you and no one else, and remembering who you are as well. So,
And one other thing I tell my clients, especially those in adulthood, they often will say, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like my mom. And I encourage people to spend that effort making sure you do identify who it is you want to be. Because we spend a lot of time and effort saying, I don't want to be like her. I don't want to be like him. I don't want to make the same mistakes they did. I don't want to feel, my kids to feel how we'll spend that effort in discovering who it is you do want to be instead of so much effort into I don't want to be them. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, I love that. And I
Right.
think that that's something that, again, I keep bringing up my struggles, but that's something that for a long time with my father struggling with that, I knew what I didn't want, but I never knew what I wanted. And it was even in little things like, what color do you like on yourself? I'm like, well, I don't like this one. I don't, which one do you like, Denim? So I think
Right.
it's important to recognize that for sure.
Yes, yes.
So you talk about building community and how it's important. How much of a role do you think it plays in the healing process?
I think it's very crucial, right?
Mm.
Oftentimes we isolate when we think that we're the only one going through it, right? You either think, I don't want to be a burden to someone. You might think no one else understands. Oftentimes I hear people say, well, they're busy, they have their own life, they don't have time for. No, I feel like God put all these people on this earth for us to have community in some sort of sense of the matter. We're not meant to go through things solely by ourselves. Then you have professionals like a therapist, a life coach, a pastor, a deacon, in church, people who have been put in positions where they've acquired knowledge to help teach you tools and resources. So community is very pivotal, right? Also, we forget when your biological family falls short, you have the ability to choose who you want in your family as well. I'm talking about what they call it, family, the friends you build that become family,
Yeah.
or it could be, this older woman figure who like took care of all the kids at school and you built a connection. It's so important to have the connection. We're not meant to go through things alone. And when you start to isolate, that's a slippery slope. When you don't have anyone challenging the narrative in your head, your narrative becomes truth. And that might not be the only thing that happened. That might not be the only perspective to take. So to have community reminds you that there's another way. Like there's another way to build connections with people. We don't have to stay in this season of, why did this happen? I'm the only one. No one understands, right?
Right.
Also, when you have people in your life that can mirror something back to you, they may be able to help you see things that you could not see. So
Mm.
when you have those trusted sources, when you build that group, when you have, outlet, someone can say, "Hey, I noticed dot 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 dot," where you might not have seen that in yourself. So it's important to have that level of connectivity and community as we navigate figuring out these next steps through the process of finding ourselves, through the process of loss, all of it.
No, I agree. I mean, like you said, just to reiterate your point, I'm a believer, and the Lord literally says we're not meant to do life alone. Like, we are meant to have community and people surrounded by us. And I truly believe everything that you said. When you surround yourself with the right people, because the Lord also says that as iron sharpens iron, a friend sharpens a friend. So you have to be surrounded by like-minded people, and like you said, people that are going to change the narrative in your head to shape your perspective to a more positive one about a situation, or people that are going to push you into the right direction, not always tell you what you want to hear, but what you
Right.
need to hear. And so I absolutely agree with that. My last question for you is for the person that might be listening today who really is just struggling right now. What is one thing that you would want them to hear from today's episode?
Season. There are seasons for things, where you are right now is not a life sentence.
Mm,
This too shall pass, right? I tell everyone a life hack is knowing that there's an ebb and a flow to everything, right? Where it may have seemed like there was this wonderful childhood, then you add in something like addiction or infidelity, and there's an absence. Then it seems like I went down.
mm,
And at times you feel like I'm in this situation, I'm never going to get out of it, but it won't always remain here. This is not a life sentence. The low, the ebb, the down part is not a life sentence. There's always a mountain that comes after the valley. So you have to
mm,
keep moving forward, right? This is also not the definition of who you are. There are things that happen to us in life, albeit some of them pretty terrible. That doesn't define who you are. And if you stay in this moment feeling like I can't see anything past this, you let that start to define the essence of who you are, but that's not who you are. And remembering if it is something like a parent that chose to leave or an addiction, their story is not mine. I have to carve my own. So you do the work, you put in the work that comes along with healing from how this has impacted you, but you still have a story to write. You still have a life to discover and live. So know that you don't have to stay stuck right here. It might feel like a really long season, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be here forever.
yeah, I love that. And I'm gonna leave it at that because that was just so powerful. That was just really, really beautifully said. And honestly, anything that I say, no, that was great. Um, I thank you so much. You are just so wise. And I do want to say for anyone listening, take advantage of experts. Like, I mean, everything that you said today, I feel like I just gained so much knowledge just from listening to you and so much healing. And I think that it's important that we take advantage of people like you who are experts in the field. That's another thing. Don't be afraid to lean on other people. And
Yeah.
you're just so great. So I really do appreciate you for coming on today and really taking time out of your day because you're very, very busy. All of our listeners, I hope that you were able to gain some sort of knowledge today and that you just are able to realize that you are whole no matter who shows up for you and you're whole without. So thank you
Amen.
so much.
Thank you, Denim.
No problem.